All right, so I am Freya Davies of Balance-EFT, and it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Mercy Rose. We've just recently found each other, and she's a shaman. And Mercy, would you like to tell us a bit about what you do?
Hi, Freya. I would actually. So I'm glad that we met. As we know, the universe aligns people in the most wonderful ways. And when I heard your share about your EFT, it's a technique I use as well. So even though I'm trained in traditional Amazonian shamanism and also the Zuni tribe of North Americas, I also work in different modalities that would be more like modern psychology. So, what I do is I treat people with all kinds of backgrounds. And some of them are high trauma individuals, and some of them are very high functioning individuals that just have a block in their life for some reason and they want to move past it. And they've tried traditional routes of therapy, as I'm sure you know, as an alternative practitioner.
Hmm.
And people will try different things, and whatever resonates with them at the time, they say when a student is ready, a teacher appears. So that's
That's
how I
it.
like to think of these things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. And do you want to share a bit about how you came to shamanism, like your journey, or is that something for another place? I don't know. What else would you like?
Well, I'm always happy to give the Campbell soup version. It's a pretty long, long story.
Yeah.
But if I were going to say the Campbell soup version, what happened was I was born into a traumatic environment. I was there for the first 12 years of my life. And when I came out of that, I didn't know even how to contextualize that. There was no way for me to understand it as a child. And so as a young adult, I tried all of the traditional routes of therapy and any type of medication or healing modality that was in the Western medicine structure. And there were some things that helped, but I got to a place where I plateaued and I still felt very internally um, there was just a lot of things. I had fragmentation in my memory and awareness. I had nervous system issues. I had a pain body that was very active. And so I could say 1,000 Louise Hay affirmations, and still this pain in my stomach or my shoulder blade or my neck was not going anywhere. And I thought, well, there has to be more than this. And so when I was younger, I had experiences with psychedelics that were very profound for me, and it was very mystical. So, we were young teenage kids and we were experimenting with different psychedelics, and my friends would be running around doing these very teenagery kind of imparting things, and I was having these transcendental mystic experiences. And I realized the first time I had an out of body experience, I was up with the stars and I was the space between them. And as I was up there, I was like, I'm onto something here. This place is so full of peace and it's so beautiful. And I feel like this might even be where we're all from. But I don't know how that could be. But I just know that this feels very serene and angelic. And I need to figure out what this is. And then when I was about 18, I saw a bodhisattva give a lecture, and the energy that was emanating from her being, from her light, from her words, again, was so serene. And it was like magic, like nothing I had ever seen before. And I decided in that moment, whatever she has, I want to understand it. That's what my heart wants to be in this.
Mm.
And so that's kind of like those are, you get these little marker points in life, like a turning point where you have an experience and you realize there's something mystical and large and beyond us. And some people call it God or a higher power, but it's something there, this loving force that's governing and the glue that's holding us all together.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's beautiful. And so that was as a teenager. And then we were talking earlier, you mentioned that it was a bit later that you really went into your training and you're really the real clearing of what, yeah, and recalling your fragments.
Yeah, so in my 20s, I got married, I had kids, I did all of the traditional things that people can do growing up and being in society and trying to live what people would call a normie life. And so I checked all those boxes, but then around the age of 30, I got a divorce, and it was very traumatic for me physically, energetically, spiritually. It just really leveled me out. And I came to the realization after a series of traumas through that divorce experience that I was a highly traumatized individual and that my nervous system had actually been like re-dysregulated all the way back to like a childlike state. And so no hospitalizations work, no medications work, things that had previously been like a stabilizer. Everything was going by the wayside. And so I just happened to go into a coffee shop and pick up a book that said My Journey with Ayahuasca. And I had no idea what it was. I said, Ayahuasca, what is that? And there was no internet like presence back then, because it was like 20 years ago. And so, I mean, it was minimal, right? There was just a few archaeology or anthropology students who had studied shamanism and had written about it. So I just decided I'm going to get on a plane. I'm going to have somebody babysit my kids. I'm such a mess of a person. I really need help. And so I'm just going to go do this. I'm not going to tell anybody what I'm doing because they'll think I'm nuts. And so I went down. And as we were talking earlier, my first week of retreats was out of this world. And so when people hear these big fish wild stories about what can happen in ceremony, I had that every minute for a week straight. And I realized in that moment also that my ceremonies would be different because my trauma was different. And so this is part of my medicine path. And what I started doing was treating highly traumatized individuals that were processing things that were I mean, it could be from anywhere in your life, but specifically 12 and under, those traumas sit differently in our body, as you know. And pre-verbal, anything 3 to 0, also, it's so somatic, it's so cellular, at least from what I see and understand. And I've studied, the Peter Levine and all of the different trauma therapists. And so I came to an understanding that there was a gap between shamanism and deep trauma therapy. So I could go to a retreat center, but they might not have the framework to hold the container of what I was going to be experiencing somatically.
Mm,
And so some places did a great job and other places traumatized me more.
I
And
can imagine. Mm,
it's kind of now how I came to be. You come out of your own learning, your own pain, your own hardships. And so I didn't want someone else to go somewhere to get a ceremony who had something like my childhood or my sisters or brothers or people that I knew who, survived those kind of situations. I wanted them to be held. And there's a theory of saying stay on your mat, stay on the mat. And I'm not in that theory. My theory is if you need someone to hold your hand, you let us know. If you need
mm.
someone to say you're safe, you let me know. I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. And so I think that's a huge thing for me is that it's so personal, and it's every single person is so personal to me because it's a child. It's their deep inner child that I'm working with. And that
Yeah.
it's a sacred responsibility. So I wouldn't leave kids alone. If they were suffering and crying and scared and terrified, I wouldn't tell them to go get on their mat.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
love that.
that's my medicine.
Yeah, well, I love the way, since we've connected and talking, it's been so beautiful we both work completely differently and yet exactly the same. And that's what I absolutely love. And the fact that, part of my training was very much you have to do your own work. You can only hold space for your client to the degree that you've cleared your own. And when I was first certified, I remember I'm going to save the world. And I remember one of my first clients, let's just say his trauma out trumped my trauma. And I experienced what that was like. And it was okay. We're still tapping, we're still regulating the nervous system. But I knew at that point I had to clear. I had a huge near-fatal car accident when I was 21. I can talk
Yeah.
more about that later. But totally, it's, and those are the things that give us give us our gifts to be able to do it. The insights through that clearing, it's huge.
Yeah, it really is. And that is such a thing too. And sometimes we have trauma and we don't even know the depths of all of it. As we were saying earlier, you can have a situation and you think you've processed it on a physical level, but there's the spiritual, emotional, energetic. There's so many layers to our experiences. And so I've had, a ceremony on a particular physical pain issue and thought, oh, that's all cleared up now. I'm all better. And then I'd be in another ceremony and would come back and I'm like, oh my goodness, I thought I fixed that. And so it was like, for me, energetically, yeah, I had pulled the person's foot out who had kicked me repeatedly, but I hadn't taken my mother's hatred out of my stomach. And so that was what came up. And sometimes things, as you know, as a practitioner, things come up in layers. And when people are ready for them
Absolutely. You
to,
can't,
right?
yeah, you can't just, it would be lovely if you could just clear it all in one go, but we'd probably fall apart because we're so made up of all of that, and it has
Yeah.
to be done at the right speed and pace. So,
Yeah. And I think spirit gives you what you can do when you can do it. And sometimes I'll have clients that want to like push more, go deeper. And I can usually tell what their nervous system can recalibrate and rebalance from coming out. And, I do a lot of aftercare with people because this is such a precious repatterning of the nervous system and energy
mm,
field that it's important for people to know that you're with them on that part of their journey. It's not just they come and see you and they pay for a weekend intensive and then they're not gone forever. They're on my prayer altar and people know this that once they've
mm,
met me and I've worked with them like their inner child that stays on my prayer altar.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
no, absolutely.
Yeah.
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 My story kind of started, so I grew up in a spiritual family. I always had an understanding of that I chose my parents. I can still remember mum, I was railing at her about something like she was picking up the fact that I was out getting drunk. And she said, until you take responsibility for your life, I'm at home experiencing that. And I'm like, well, I didn't ask you to do that. And she
Yeah.
said, you chose us as parents. And I was like, I did not believe that. And yet a part of me just knew that was the truth. So I always had these kind of understandings as growing up. Um, and have been in a spiritual organization or a spiritual group, deepening my contact with my higher self all my life. But when I was 21, I had this near fatal car accident, and maybe just a month or so before, one of Mum's friends had given me Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life, because I was a bit wild, liked partying, and I'd read enough of it to think, yeah, that's great. I mean, the thing that really resonated was you're 100% responsible for your life. And when you can
Yeah.
fully own that, then you will not be a victim. You can be empowered because you can look at yourself. So that made complete sense. Um, and then maybe, yeah, a month later, I come to and they're cutting a tracheostomy in my throat because I'd had this car accident. I was drunk. And this was 1989, an old Mark One Escort that didn't have an airbag, and it just shattered my face, and my entire jaw was snapped in half and out here, and my nose was broken in 5 places, and lip
Oh.
hanging off, and it was pretty gruesome. And then when I came to in intensive care,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to write a note because you can't talk. Um, was anybody hurt? No. And it's like, thank you, God. And I just knew this was my lesson. This is like, okay, well, I'm going to heal because I'd always totally believed, probably because of my upbringing,
Yeah.
that we could heal anything, that our bodies are capable of doing that. Everything I'd read within Louise Hay's book just made sense to me, but I hadn't read that much of it.
This
But
was
I
you
lay
and your
there and
friend?
just repeated, I allow myself to heal. I allow my bones to go back.
Yeah.
Now, Mum spoke to the surgeon. It was nearly 3 days after the accident because they were waiting for the most experienced surgeon to come up from Wellington, I live in Auckland.
Yeah.
And Mum had been giving me arnica and rescue remedy and
Oh,
homeopathic
oh,
and bark flower
yeah.
remedy.
Arnica's amazing.
Yeah, totally. I didn't even have black eyes, which was incredible, but how she's giving me that on my wrist, and I'm just in my drugged state because of the pain, and saying I can heal. Mum spoke to the surgeon and after the operation, and she said he just had this look of awe on his face because he was the most experienced surgeon in New Zealand and he'd never seen anything like it. This part of my palate, it was snapped right to the back. All of this is out here, and it was grey, and he was pretty concerned because there was no blood going to it. And he said, as soon as he put it back, it turned pink in front of his eyes. And
Oh,
there was so much. The healing was pretty miraculous. It was very quick and went well. And I went back and lived with mum and dad while my jaw was wired. It was meant to be 6 weeks. After 4 weeks, they're like, wow, this is incredible, etc. And in that time, I'd picked up Louise Hay's book and followed it, did the exercises and so on. So I became, at 21, I really learned to become aware of my thoughts. Everything just made so much sense to me, and I made some huge changes. I remember sharing that with the people around me and being delighted to see them implement it, like writing lists of what they wanted, and then they're going, Freya, guess what? That had happened. It was so cool. And then a few years later, I got married and moved to England. So mid-20s now, and for the next 27 years, I still stayed very positive.
could I
There was
ask
a
you some
lot that wasn't
questions?
right within the marriage. Um, yeah, I've left now. That's what I'm going to say there.
That's
Uh,
okay.
what I could see now when I left and I learned about trauma bonding and codependency and all these other things, although I was being super positive, I did not know how to be with the negative energies of anything. And I never had because nobody ever taught us how to do that as a child. So even though I was tapping, mum knew about tapping when it first happened. Somehow, I don't know how in New Zealand she knew about tapping, but and so I would be, even though I'm really upset, I'm fine. And I would just go straight to the negative, to the positive. It was almost like I was gaslighting myself because I just I couldn't be with it. And it wasn't until I left the marriage that I really learned how, yeah, how we can just be so bypassed. I remember thinking, being positive is great. And without a doubt, there was many, many good things, and there was many good things within the marriage as well. But I didn't know.
I have a theory. It's hard for a rose to grow next to a nuclear power plant.
Yeah.
So
Well,
you
also,
can be as rosy as you'd like, but when you're in a garden that's got some things in it that are not in your highest alignment, you're just not going to thrive, you know? So we do all these things to tap and pray and cleanse our energy and our spirit, but if we're in bad company or the wrong company, just wrong for us, then we're not going to be our highest selves. Our light can't be as bright as it could be, right?
well, the thing that I really love since studying doing and certifying in Quantum EFT, this is where it got really juicy and this is where, as I was learning, every cell of my body was reverberating with the truth as you're learning it. And it was understanding the soul contracts, understanding that, you know, spirit, we're all divine beings of light, and we come in to experience what we come to experience for our growth. And I remember asking my trainer, Jenny Johnson, what about narcissists? And she said, well, they're teaching us, they're our catalysts. And
Yeah.
And it was so true. It's like, that doesn't mean you have to stay there, but I could totally honor at that. I mean, there was still a lot to be processed, and my goal had always been to get to reach forgiveness. But I can say through the work that I've done, it's coming 3.5 years since I left the marriage, that I can say I have true compassion for the father of my three sons and my ex-husband, because he's he's got a wounded inner child. He's got, I can honestly pray that he will find what he needs. But our contract is done. Thank you.
Yes, amen to that. God bless your journey away from me. As we spoke earlier, I
Yeah.
said same, different. I had a similar experience with my marriage, and same thing with the narcissism. So I've developed a quantum narcissistic healing practice for people to heal from narcissism as well, and it has to do with quantum theories and
Hmm.
quantum entanglement. And so we're looking at the quantum, the spiritual, the psychological, the energetics, all of those pieces and components of it. And I'm sure it's like we use different terms, but some of even our terms are the same. So I'm super curious about how your quantum EFT is different than a traditional EFT.
Great question. We start off the same. We, like, often a client will come, and it's amazing how much can be done just in a one-off session, although generally 3 sessions is kind of a better if there's, so you might have, it could be a phobia, it could be just something that's coming up in your life repeatedly that nothing else seems to shift. So we ask the, we tune into what you're feeling in the body, because that's a whole nother topic. The innate wisdom we get from our bodies, the
Mhm.
sensations, and as we describe it, we get insights. So we're acknowledging that, and we're asking our guides and higher self to show us. So we can ask, we can set, sorry, we can set our intention to our
Mhm.
multidimensional DNA. That's where all of our lifetimes are stored. That's where the patterns and everything. So we can say we're going to process and release that all the way back to its origin through all lifetimes and dimensions, etc., through all fragments. However, we need to know what we're meant to have learned from that. So it's about asking, what is it I need to see? And then there's different ways of doing. Every session is unique, but often we will rise up. No, I'll go back a step. Often something will come through. There'll be a lifetime where somebody recognizes aspects, and it's always fascinating. Even people that think that they've never don't visualize or don't see things, they'll get a whisper. I always encourage them, just whatever you feel or sense, just say it, because as soon as you start to express it, I'm sure you find this, more
Will
comes
come
through.
through. Yeah, I'm gonna grab my charging cord really quick. I just thought my battery was low on my iPad. I'm gonna get this guy plugged in. Um, so this is also curious to me because we work so similarly. And so for me, what happens is because I'm a seer, I see all of the lifetimes. And so then I say, take me to the origin, take me to the original lifetime.
Hmm.
And then I'm channeling, my eyes are closed and I'm looking and I can see these geometries. And then it goes back to the lifetime. And then I see this is the kind of body you were in. This is the kind of body the other people are in. This is what the environment looks like. I try to see if I can place it, if it's Earth, if it's somewhere else, what shapes they're in, if there's any technology around to give me an indication of like what kind of civilization it is. And then I can see for myself what's going on. And the person has their eyes closed and they're in this kind of trance state that they've gone into, whether through plants or drumming or breath work or, a guided meditation that we go through. And so I'm clearing it and I'm calling in angels, and the angels are coming and they're filling things with light and they're repatterning the quantum. And then when we're done, we fill everything with light, and then I bring the person back to where they are. So it just is like so mind-blowing to me that, we have these totally different training backgrounds and yet there's so many similarities, you
We
know?
get the same result, well, similar result, yeah. The
Yeah.
thing that I really love with this is that people are perceiving it for themselves. It's very much about so say they've come back to this often that where they're being shown or sensing, it could be that they're somebody that's in their life now, they see a completely different relationship. It could be father and daughter, whereas at the moment you're siblings or anything. And
Yeah.
you can kind of freeze that scene. You can bring in whatever they need. You can take them right away. And this is within the quantum, you just jump timelines.
Wow.
But more often than not, we will rise up higher and higher to meet with the higher beings of light and ask anything that they want to ask. It might be, um, what was the learning of that life? So I know for myself of many sessions, especially my training,
Yeah.
and I visited some very brutal, tortures and various things which seem so senseless. And actually, it was just my soul wanted to understand or really understand nothing mattered but the truth. Now, at
Yeah.
the time, I had just got sober,
Mm.
and anybody that's ever battled an addiction knows that honesty gets a bit grey. And so that really helped to bring, that's a whole nother story. I'll talk about it
Yeah.
separately, but I'm quite happy to, but I just want to stay on track. And another one might be that nothing can actually hurt your soul. We feel so much fear in this body, and yet actually nothing can hurt
Yeah.
us.
Well, once you know you're eternal and infinite, well, one, knowing you're eternal takes a lot of pressure off of getting things all done and all right the first time. And then two, knowing that you're infinite is such a paradigm shift for people because I think some of us are conditioned from a young age to think that we're small and we're weak and we're dumb and we're this and we're that. And so anything that's not God light is what I call it, that I see on a person, I similarly am like, I clean it off. I clean off
Mm,
the distortion, the shadow. I see it in a geometrical pattern. And so when I look into the geometrical pattern, it should be like a Mandelbrot fractal. It should be perfectly symmetrical and able to repeat itself. And so if I see something that's out of balance or a discord or a darker color, then I go into it and I start moving around and I take the little jagged shape tangle things and I pull those out. And
beautiful.
then
I love it.
the same thing with the light. If it's not like these frequencies of light, if it's something that looks decaying or rotting or something gray and black, I'm like, oh, that's also not godlike. Let's get in there and and if it's a green, like a putrid rotting green, I just blow my unconditional love of green light, and I have these light beamer pen tools that I work with too that have the laser diodes in them, and I put the light onto people's bodies, and so it's like an auric field repair. So it's all of these things that somehow magically do wonderful things for people.
Mm. Yeah, no,
I, so good,
isn't it
right?
wonderful? I've got to say that, and I'm sure it'll be the same for you, when you find this is what we came for. And all of the muck beforehand was training, and I
Yes.
get it. I don't, I've
So
had friends say, "Oh, don't you regret that, why didn't you come home to New Zealand years ago?" And it's like, no, because it wasn't the right
it's
time.
always the perfect time. The
It
lotus
was
grows from the mud in the perfect time on the perfect day.
totally, it was exactly the right time. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. Um,
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? I'm sure you've seen this in your clients and patients too, is that they'll have this huge breakthrough and you're like, hooray. And then they start shooting on themselves. Oh, I should have done this years ago. And I wish and I'm like, whoa, hey, let's celebrate this moment. Because we just had a huge breakthrough you've been waiting your whole life for. So let's be in this victory.
yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. So
So
I have a
go,
question. I have a
yeah.
curiosity. So for me, for instance, I'm always working on myself and working on things, and I've studied quantum techniques and I've studied EFT, but I've never done a session with you individually, and we're new friends, and so something I'm curious about is for me, for the first 12 years of my life, I had complete amnesia. And then from 12 to 30, I had a dissociative amnesia where each day I would wake up and be like, oh, where am I? Whose house is this? This is my house. Okay, my name is Mercy. What else do I know? I'd look out the window. Oh, it must be fall. I see colors on the trees. So I would rebuild my timeline. And once I started working with the head medicine spirits and plant medicine teachers, I held more and more of my awareness. Now,
Hmm.
at this point in my life, I could say I'm like 95% of my life force back to me. There is still this small 5% variable that can go up to 10% when under severe stress, where what's happening is it's almost like there's a plate and there's a wall and there's a fragmentation and I don't have conscious access all the way, and it feels like a protector. It feels like a protector that's like a trusting, not trusting, and is also outside of my conscious threshold and awareness. So no matter what I've done to try to interact and experience with this part, and I even went to a hypnotherapist. And the
Hmm.
interesting thing was when she opened the door, I went like that. And I thought, "Oh, Mercy, why did you just startle like that? She's just here to help you." And there was something in me that felt very fearful.
Hmm.
And so I thought, "Oh, this is an unhealed, unconscious, fragmented, wounded part that's here. It is here, but I have no access to it." And so I'm curious, like as a practitioner, when you come across someone who has something like with my issue, how would you go about like addressing that? What is your protocol? Like how are your sessions for someone who's never been to you before?
Sure, that's a good question too. So it depends on where we're at. If it's somebody I'm going to be working with for a while with the inner child work, so this is very much the inner child work, and we would take, so especially with the memories that are buried, that we ha can't access them, and m many of my clients had a wonderful childhood. I had a wonderful childhood. We don't remember the things that made us believe that we weren't worthy. And it doesn't mean that there was even abuse. An emotion like for myself, my father, I always knew I really loved him. I've always had a great relationship. I've got three older brothers. I was the little girl. But he was emotionally completely absent. He was always busy. He was always working. So it wasn't until I was doing this work, it was last year, and I realized I was scared of Dad. And I said to Dad, because by now I've moved back with my father. I found my voice with my father. It's been beautiful. The layering, doing inner child work while he's living upstairs. There are so many layers to this.
Yeah.
And he was quiet, probably one of the best listeners I've ever known. He is so fully present. And he said, yeah, I remember feeling that way about my dad. I thought that was the way to be. That was their generation. He turns 90 in about 3 weeks. And
Yeah.
so going on from that, then I also realized that, for me, people talk about how we marry something similar to our parents or whatever. But what I really understood with this was that the way that it's energy. So for me, fear and love went hand in hand.
Oh.
And that's what I married. I never knew that I was scared of my husband till I left him. I was so used to that feeling, that vibration of fear and love was what
Oh.
felt familiar. And I remember a couple of guys I met that were lovely, and the whole they're too nice. It's because you don't know what that doesn't feel like love.
Wow.
Doesn't that make sense in a different way?
It
I mean,
it does make I say you don't go to the neighborhood that's healthy, you go to the neighborhood you know. Like
yeah,
if you're driving your car and you don't think about it and you just moved, you'll drive to your old neighborhood just out of habit. And so it's just an unconscious knowing or direction that you're heading in because your nervous system memorized the familiarity,
it's
right?
all in the nervous system. And I mean, I used to look at my dad was nothing like my partners in those outer ways. he didn't smoke weed or like look tough.
Yeah.
But it was that frequency. So yeah, that was really huge.
Wow.
And then taking the time this last five, no, nine, what are we, August? It was about November, December last year that my guides and higher self, my message was slow down. And I had to pretty much put everything on hold apart from my one-on-one clients. I had all of these things I wanted to do. Um, and I had to learn how to just literally slow down my
I know.
speech, my movement.
Wow.
I had to walk differently. I had pain. And when I asked, it was like, your energy's here, your body's learning to recalibrate to that. And if I went for a walk, even with this pain in my feet, because I'd got tendonitis again, it
Yeah.
was like if I was fully present and actually aware, no pain at all. It was so frustrating. I just wanted to power on. And I learned, and then you learn through all of that how much there was so much learning within my nervous system needed to learn what it feels like to be safe. It's all very well to be visioning all these wonderful things, but you don't even know what that feels like, so it's that was another layer of it. And the other thing with slowing down is that until we actually learn to slow down, or until I learned to slow down, I'd been asking for all of these things. I'm setting my intention every morning. I'm um, clear about what I want. But if I was rushing too fast, the universe is constantly creating for you, like everything's coming through, but you're rushing past it. And when I actually slowed down, I recognized that I had this to-do list. And it was that whole case of like, that just got done in 5 minutes instead of the hours that it was going to be because I'd slowed down enough to let it. And that's all laid with the whole trust and surrender. And it's all this beautiful big soup pot of everything that we need to learn to do. But slowing down is just so essential. Being clear about what we want and then trusting that it will come through and then slowing down to receive it.
Yeah, and I think there's something sacred not just in slowing down, but pausing before moving on also, because sometimes we have these huge lists of all these things we want to accomplish, and we get something done, and then we hurry up and jump into the next thing. And it's like, sitting in gratitude with spirit and saying, wow, you just performed a real miracle for me. I'm just going to sit with this for a minute and really shine the light back onto you. Like, thank you, universe, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely do that. It's just like, and it's the little things, noticing the little things and being grateful. Just constantly,
Yeah.
that
And
whole
I think
thing.
the more you notice the little things and the more of that you can stay in a frequency of gratitude, the more big things that you get coming in because you are thankful for it. And so spirit knows it's giving a gift to a thankful recipient.
Oh,
There's nothing
totally.
worse than someone giving you a gift and they just go, oh, this thing, and they set it on the table and you're like, oh man, I searched a long time for that gift.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then it's the whole energetic, the frequency, it's the magnetism of the heart that's drawing it in.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Nice. So beautiful. So beautiful. So let me see if I can think of some curious questions for someone who is meeting you for the first time and they've never done EFT and they've
hmm
heard about it, or maybe they even tried a YouTube video and they said, "Oh, this stuff doesn't work for me." Why would it not work for someone? Do they not have a good practitioner? Did they not have clear thoughts? What do you think happens?
That's a great question. One thing I've found that can happen is, well, a couple of different things. Sometimes people just aren't ready. They're just too resistant. They're kind of going
Yeah.
through it, but they're not really giving themselves permission. One thing I've noticed a lot, especially with elderly people, is a big part of it is like allowing ourselves to feel our emotions. And um, it can take a while tapping for those to come through. They've been buried so deep. We don't let ourselves feel so many things. So sometimes it's just, I've had sessions where it seems like nothing's happening, but they're yawning, there's energy moving, but we're just staying very simple, just allowing the body to get used to releasing some of these emotions, because often we're connecting with, we might have physical pain, and that's always linked to an emotional state, but nine times out of ten, 9 times out of 10, when you say, when you tune into that pain, is there an emotion? I'm fine. No, I'm fine. I've accepted it. So you might have accepted it. And it's not until we've done quite a few rounds of tapping, yeah, I'm actually really frustrated. And it's like, aha. And then as that starts to be acknowledged, now the subconscious brings forward a memory that could have been
Okay.
buried for ages, and now you've got this memory. Because with tapping, we want to be really specific. That's where it gets really effective. That's where we're
Okay.
literally, with any traumatic incident, there's all these flags within the brain. So what was happening, there'll be a smell, sounds, different things, and there are triggers. And so we can be doing general tapping, and that is great. It's, I'd used the tapping solution. I mean, the Ortners are phenomenal. They've just done so much for millions of people. I know for myself that it was still quite general, and it wasn't until I worked with doing one-on-one courses where somebody's holding the space for you and taking you deep into your memories or the aspects, that you get these really profound shifts because they're personal to you.
Yeah.
But when, like, I hold tapping circles, I do live tapping on Insight Timer and also within my own community on school. And the beauty of that is that even though it is kind of general, because we're working in a circle, you've got that energetic connection, and
Yeah.
we have something called borrowed benefits. And when you're looking at other people on the screen, you've got your mirror neurons that are, everything's firing and just goes deeper. Yeah, does that make
Yeah.
sense?
It does make sense. There is something about being in a group and being witnessed, and I find the same thing in my women's group. Is that, we're there collectively, and there is an energy that is shared. And so I'm curious about, is there like, so for me, when I have someone and I'm asking, I notice some people can't say how they're feeling. If you give them a feelings wheel, they just look at it. They can't even point to something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so I know what you're saying about the stalked feelings. And so sometimes I'll say, okay, I notice you're tensing up right here in your shoulder. Can you describe that for me? Oh, it just hurts. It's uncomfortable. And I'd say, well, if it was a color, what color would it be? If it was a shape, what shape? And so sometimes I feel like there could be a workaround for people that are kind of like blocked on talking about their feelings because they've been so shut down, or like, their nervous system has an aversion to talking about feelings. So are there other ways you can get around somebody's like that kind of built-in protector?
Well, yes. So the fact is, like, so it's a couple of things. For a lot of veterans, for PTSD, it's super effective. And again, it's not so, you can just stick with the physical, just what you're feeling. And then the act of describing it, you'll say, um, I've got something in the stomach. It's like, okay, can you do, like, exactly like you said, can you describe that for me? Oh, it's just, I don't know, and they're not really used to describing it, but you keep encouraging them. Is it hot? Is it cold? Does it grip? Does it pinch? And then they start to describe it, and then it's the same. Is there a color? Often it's like, is it like a stone, or is it, or you don't really want to give them the words, but it's like they will describe. It's a golf ball. Now, as you're using these words, this is where it gets so fascinating, because they're bringing the words in. It's really important that it's always their words. We try not to give them anything. We're just
Yes.
repeating back. It can be as little, doesn't matter. It's their stuff, and if you do change the words, I've experienced this. That's like your practitioner giving you something else. That's not me. That's super powerful in itself. Somebody, you're being witnessed. Um, And then whatever that object is that they describe, or what, that brings through memories. So there's all these bridges. But as you know, the voice, it's so, and the power of the words carries so much. And even if they can't tune into the emotions, they're still processing stuff. So tell
Yeah.
me about your, I'd love to know more about your women's circle.
Yeah, so my women's circle is called Circle of Roses. It's a private WhatsApp group, and I created it as a sacred space for women to enter into because, I travel in North and South Americas and I meet all different people. I meet healers, energy practitioners. Some people are people I would work with and facilitate with. Some people are my clients. Some people are friends of clients. And so I wanted a shamanic community where people could come together specifically for women. And so I started the Circle of Roses group. And more recently, I've started the Shaman's Cup. And what that is a co-ed group because I had so many men requesting that they be able to be in a support group as well. And so it is a paid community and it's private and it's for people who seriously want to invest in being in a community, understanding shamanism, energy healing, and being seen by other people and held up for our victories and what it is. We're all here working together on this planet, healing ourselves, healing others, shining our light. And so, even if it's not someone's full time practice to be in the healing arts, they could still have a personal calling to it. And so, this is why I made a community space for this because in my 20 years of traveling and studying shamanism, I felt like there was an empty space where I would want to learn from someone who was a very open practitioner who could say to me, literally, if you want to learn tree diets, here you go. Here's the information. This is how you do it. So you don't have to be at any level of sophistication within it's like, there's a pecking order in the system. And so I don't like pyramids. I just feel like it's a community and it's a round table and we're equals. And I might have had more experiences or drank more cups or, had these things, but it doesn't mean I'm any better. It just means I'm along in my path and I have knowledge. And not only that, but I'm not going to last forever in this body. So when I get to go somewhere else, I would love to know that there are people here that can do a ceremony for someone, that can say a prayer over someone, that can feel comfortable learning how to do these things in a really judgment free zone where everyone is like welcoming. It's a community. So that's part of what I didn't like in my training, and that's where I saw, oh, let me create this space for people. Let me call. So
Mm.
that's why it's called the Shaman's Cup. It's like come to the table, sit down, bring your cup, bring your medicine, bring your magic. Like let's make this community. Let's all have a talk around the table about what we're all doing here, right?
I love that. Yeah, because we're all, the thing is that we all work, within our training, we were kind of more than encouraged, it was kind of a requirement to be doing swap sessions. So everybody has their swap partners, and it's so important. We were just talking about this before too, that you know we need to work with other people. Everybody does their day. Well, I guess most people do their daily work. But when it comes to trauma, and we'll always be carrying stuff, there's always more layers. We just go deeper and gain more understanding and so on.
Yeah.
And it's not safe for us to do that on our own. Our nervous system won't allow us, so we can go
Yeah.
their way. But you know what
I
it's
think
like when you're working with somebody else, you get these unbelievable shifts. So,
Yeah,
oh,
and it's really important too, like as practitioners, that we get to still do our shadow work. We get to do our lifting. Like that's something where once you can get so high up and be known publicly, people will think, "Oh, you're perfect. Oh, everything's healed, or your life is fantastic." And it's like, no, actually, I
no
still have
way.
same ordinary people problems. I'm still having trauma triggers come up, but I'm just handling them and it's okay. I'm a human and so are you. And so we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have it all together all the time. Is maybe some of what we do high pressure? Yeah. Are a lot of people counting on us? Yeah, but we still get to be humans too. And so I
Yeah,
feel like taking
absolutely.
it down off of that pedestal. And that's why one of the things I do is like when I do my social media posts, I'll call it everyday shamanism, 60-second shamanism, because I want people to know it's accessible. You can make
Yeah.
it a life practice and you don't have to live in the jungle. You can if you want to. It's a beautiful place, but you can also make a small altar. You can make a little medicine bag in your purse with a little fabric and a little stone and an animal and an angel feather. And so it's like anywhere you are, you can have ceremony for yourself, for someone you love. You can just stop and, say, speak to the ancestor and say that this person needs help, So it's a
Yeah,
good way to really take control of your life and be interactive and be in charge of it. Like how you said, we're not victims. Life's happening through us, not to us, through us,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. That reminded me of something when you're saying about the ceremony. It was something last year. I was following somebody, um, and there was something came up about ceremony, and I really had resistance to it, and I was curious. It's kind of like, as you say, we always have more stuff to clear. The difference is we can usually go through it more quickly, or we do it with a swap within a swap session, and this it turned out within a quantum session. I I don't remember the exact details. It had been pretty traumatic in some lifetime and I swore a vow I would never participate in sacred ceremony again because it had not been safe. And I had to renounce and clear that vow because it was blocking so much. And that was really powerful. And these are the things, there's so many layers, so many lifetimes of things
It's
that,
such a clue, right? Like when something comes up and you have resistance and you're like, where is this coming from? Immediately I'm like, is this lifetime or past? And so sometimes I ask a series of questions before people can even think about it to just get their unconscious to just hurry up and say, how many lifetimes is it? How many? And so because I'm like, obviously, if we, and so whenever I meet someone and they're like, I'm claustrophobic, I'm like, oh, because you were buried a bunch, you were crushed, you were buried. Like, yeah, that's why you're claustrophobic. So it's interesting to think pretty much anything that we have a fear of or an aversion of could literally be healed. Like, how, that's why when you say there's really nothing to be afraid of, there really isn't.
that's the whole thing of curiosity, like the more curious we can be, the more questions we can ask. We've got all the help that we need. We've just got to
Yeah.
ask and then slow down enough to hear the answer.
Yeah. And I
Because,
think
it's
there's something
yeah.
about the curiosity thing. I had an issue with curiosity at one point in my life. I had a therapist, he kept going, get curious, be curious. I said, I'm not going to cuss. I said, F this curious word, so you're going to have to find a different word. It's not working for me. And he said, why not? And I said, I grew up in a trauma zone. I didn't have time to be curious. I had to be cautious. And so he didn't work out as a therapist for many reasons, but he did IFS and he was one of the founders. And so that's why I went out of my way to get sessions with him. But what I realized was that even though he knew IFS and he knew the structure of it, he didn't understand the highly traumatized child that lived in a state of terror and how
Mm,
to bridge where she was to where curiosity lived to allow her to get there to feel safe because she had never been curious because she didn't have time to be. So it was a totally different skill that as an adult I didn't even possess. And so I had to
course,
go
yeah.
find a play therapist and play with her on her table with all of her toys and talk while I was playing and moving and being tactile. And
Mm,
that gave me the bridge to become a curious person. But it was a
mhm.
different setting, it was a different teacher, it was a different therapist, but it was like, how would I even know until I had this gentleman who was this very esteemed, high regard person known in IFS that everyone just couldn't stop raving about. And I thought, well, he's not working for me at all.
And yet he was because he helped you find that, didn't
Well,
he?
he worked
Really,
in
in
that
in a
way. He
sense.
worked in that way. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I mean, like you found it. I'm just saying, that's it might have been quicker, but yeah, I mean, I don't think I completely answered your question earlier. You said, what would you do with the child parts? And I sort of branched into quantum,
yeah, well,
but
it's a protective part is what it is. So it's a big protector part. So is it child? It was developed in a childlike state and age, but it is a protector part, so it's not childlike, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah. Well, you'd asked me earlier how, how do we connect with the inner child? What would you do? I'm pretty sure you asked that, but I went into quantum.
That's
Um,
okay.
the-
I
um,
asked about if I had this 5% of my mind that I didn't have conscious access to.
right.
How would you start to interact with that? And so you went into a child part, but in my mind, I thought, oh, it's not really a child part. It was developed as a child, but it's actually like a protector. So it's a bigger, older part that I don't have the.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're all kind of linked, but generally it starts so young. And so, I
Yeah,
mean, I just find that our body, our innate knows, so with whatever it is that's coming up, we'll
yeah.
clear the reaction at this time to something that's happened. Bring that, we always take what's called a SUD score, subjective units of distress, so 0 to 10. So you can see that that's come down enough to go to the child. And then we use dominant, non-dominant hand tapping. And this is HeartShine EFT, founded by Nico and a Jean. Amazing work.
Interesting.
And so we tap in with the dominant hand, the hand you write with. That's you, the inner adult. And you just start, you kind of tune in. You might not even feel your child, but you're just addressing them and you're just saying, I'm here for you. I see you. I love you. You're safe. All of the things that we needed to hear. Then we switch. And quite often at the beginning, there's zilch, nada, because our inner child, like the way she likened it, is if you were to take in a foster child that's been abandoned, they're not going to talk to you. Why should they trust you? And that's good.
Yeah,
They've got good
yeah,
instincts.
yeah.
So you just give them a space. That's fine. And you go, that's okay. I'm not asking anything of you. I'm just letting you know I'm here. And so this
Oh,
is where the work develops. So it's really about doing daily work just to
yeah.
let them know. And I'm going to be creating more courses to teach this. There's so much more to it within this of,
I love that. I love the concept of going and visiting the child, visiting the adult self, and also that, yeah, waiting for that child part to be ready, just as you said, to communicate. And I've had some breakthroughs and different types of parts therapy that I've done over the years because of that, because having that patience, right? So I'm excited that you're going to teach.
yeah,
Could you
yeah.
tell me more about that?
So I've got a community on School, SKOOL, and within that I do live tapping, and I'm just getting started with creating courses. So I'm teaching about the inner child, and then some of the framework. I mean, there's a whole umbrella really because there's I'm trained in the healing from narcissistic toxic relationships, boundaries, and then healing the inner child because they all go together. And
Is that
the
three different courses or is that one
it will
one?
be there'll be kind of one in this. I'm just kind of going to find I think I'll start with the inner child to begin with to get people learning to dialogue because even just keeping it very simple is enough, just showing up. But then there's so much more because, as Nico said, our inner childs are ninjas. And
Okay.
so often they are driving the bus, and we think we're really rational adult, and it's not. It's a child part that, like, just seems very rational. So it takes quite a lot to even recognize that. And then there's the programming. So there's a whole part on the toxic family rules, and I ticked every single one. I'm sure most people do. They were just the norm.
Yeah.
For instance, for me, this was a big one. Loyalty. People think loyalty is great. In
Oh,
this family, we're loyal. Well, that's great until there's abuse. Then
oh, I
what?
know. I
But,
know. I
so many
yeah.
people pride themselves on being loyal, and yet that's what stops them from being able to create boundaries.
I think that narcissists plant the word loyalty in an artificial way to get people hooked in. It's like a guilt hook. And I hear that,
Well,
I
I think too that it's just been part of possibly. I'm not going to pretend to understand where it came from because maybe back a long time ago in community it was really important, and But I mean, for me, it was my mum had a really big family, and that was, farming people, and that's huge.
Yeah.
It seems so great, accepting people as they are. And it's not till you get older that like even a lot of your friends don't even deserve to be your friends, but you think you've got to be their friends, stay friends because of this
Yeah.
loyalty.
Yeah, we hold on to people for a myriad of reasons, and we think it's useful or helping us, or we're being loyal or faithful, or, a good person to endure some hardships that we don't actually need to.
That's
Um,
right.
it,
Yeah,
it's just part of the clearing process. I think as we elevate and our energy goes up and we're more healed, we can start to see through those dynamics and we're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's not for me anymore. I've outgrown that. Just like an old pair
yeah,
of tennis shoes, I'm just going to drop them in the bin and donate them. And those aren't mine anymore. I'm going to go get a new pair that's really comfortable and supportive.
yeah,
I've got some
yeah,
walking
and
to do. I need a good pair of support.
yeah, because that's no longer familiar. That doesn't need to be the familiar. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so
So that's just
one of
one of 19 toxic family rules. And so it's like going through those, recognizing which are the strongest for you. For each person has their particular ones. And then they have to do work around that, really. This is where with tapping and whatever other journaling is amazing. But it's basically bringing your consciousness to it, seeing it, getting curious,
yeah,
going, does that really serve me? And then going to the inner child, because you don't want to take a dysregulated inner adult to your inner child. That's not going to work.
yes,
So
yeah,
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 it's
you got
doing
to
the
get it.
learning for your inner, as the cognitive inner adult, and then going back and teaching her she's safe. And then we also the part that I really love is the revisioning, having she's now feeling safe, or he,
Yes,
and loved and seen and heard. And it's like, so what do you really want? You can have anything. And this is where it gets really magical. And as I mentioned before, my inner child likes flying on dragons, and
yeah,
I call in Freya the goddess. She kicks ass when ass needs kicking.
yeah,
And our
I
brain
love,
does not know the difference, and we carry that energy within us. It is so
yeah,
powerful. And of
it
course, our inner child is our soul. It's our soul expression that knew how to connect with us before we got bigger and messed up by this earth plane.
Yeah, it's just literally returned into its infinite wonderfulness, like everything we were, right? It's
Yeah,
all returned back. And I love that the doorway of imagination is where joy lives, is hope, is where manifestation, is where the best things are created. Because when we have a coherent, brain and heart field around us, and we're in these waves of gratitude and joy, that's really when we're creating the best version of ourselves, the best version of our lives. And we'll draw more of that to us. When we
yeah,
become that, that's what we draw to us. So I'm
yeah,
super
totally.
excited for your courses. I'm super excited to share them with everybody. I can't wait for this to I can wait. I'm so excited for this to get out on social media and to be shared. And so for someone who might be streaming by and where they're watching this interview and they stop and they click, I'm going to assume that there's links in your bio for them to
Hmm.
get to your website, and that there's course material there if they want to preview something, if they want to just get enrolled right away. Like, what do you know what the next steps are that we could let people know about if they're just like, this has resonated, right? We want them to
Yeah,
be able
for
to
sure.
take next steps.
So right now, at the moment, anybody can join on my community on school, um, and you can have a week for free, and then you choose whether you want to join, and it's a paid community after that.
Fantastic. And
And
what
at
is
the
your
moment,
community in school called?
Balance EFT,
Balance EFT. So if we go to the school website and we type in Balance EFT, you'll pop up. The
correct.
first week is free. I mean, how much better could it be? I just get to go and stay somewhere for free and check out the vibes and community, right?
Yeah.
And receive whatever's there. And then, it's some nominal fee, which is probably more, people probably spend more per month on coffees than they do on something that's so magical that's going to heal their inner child. And, they could have a coffee at home if they want to and come to your class and just really benefit their lives in a way that's astounding, right? Like they can't even fathom. It could be so great.
Totally. Thank you. And
Yeah.
what about yourself? How are people going to find you? Because we're both going to be sharing this video on our
Yeah, so
respective
we
platforms.
are both in the school community. You are on the school community for your platform. My platform is Patreon. That is
Mhm.
where my Shaman's Cup is going to be hosted, the cafe over there. And you can find me on my socials, of course, Instagram, Facebook. And if you go to my website, mercyrose777.com, you can take a look at people who've worked with me from all over the world. You can take a look at the different services that I offer. And if you're interested in shamanic training and being in a community, you can click right through my website and it puts you right into the Patreon group. And if you just feel like you need some healing and you need an oracle divining reading for your life to get some clarity on where you need to go, if you have something that's been in your field that you have tried everything else with and you need a deep shamanic clearing, that's one of the things I love to do because I want everyone to just get the very best versions of themselves. So when someone tells me, I've been all over the world, I've been to everyone, and someone sends them to me, I'm like, oh, I'm like rolling my sleeves up because I'm like, yes, I love this because I know it's the healing is there for everybody, right? And it's just they just needed a certain kind of medicine or a certain kind of goodness, and I believe all things are possible. So in that way, yeah, when people come into my website and they book a session, even when they click the payment book link and put it on the calendar, instantly things start happening,
Yes, I know. It's
right?
incredible, isn't it? It's like people choose themselves. They say, "Yes, I'm worth this,"
Yes.
and it's
And the
yeah,
universe starts turning the gears and the
yeah,
miracles and blessings just start coming in and
yeah.
it's so amazing. So I'm so honored that you took time out of all of the cosmos for us, our stars to cross their paths and we get to share both of our goodnesses and what we get to do to help people. This has just been fantastic. Thank you.
It's great, and I'm sure we will be doing more connecting without a doubt.
I'm quite sure we'll have to collaborate on something amazing.
For sure. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, of
Okay, well,
course.
thank you. See you.
Okay, Freya. Thank you.
Bye.